Kyle Brennan wiped the grease from his hands and looked at the plasma conduit with tired eyes. 14 hours of work and the repair was finally done. His back hurt, his head hurt, and he wanted nothing more than a hot shower and 8 hours of sleep. But first he needed food. The mess hall of the Horizon's Edge was half empty when Kyle walked in. Most of the crew had already eaten and gone to bed. Only a few engineers and night shift workers sat at the metal tables, eating their dinners in silence. Kyle grabbed a tray and filled it with whatever looked edible. The food on colony ships was never good, but after 14 hours of work anything would taste fine. He sat down at a table where his friend Danny Martinez was finishing his meal. Danny looked up and grinned. "You look terrible," Danny said. "Thanks," Kyle replied. He took a bite of something that was supposed to be chicken. It tasted like cardboard. "I feel terrible too. Did you fix the conduit?" "Yeah, it should hold for another few months. Then it will probably break again." Kyle ate more of the tasteless food. "I hate this ship sometimes," Danny laughed. "We all hate this ship. But it beats being stuck on Earth, does it though?" Kyle asked. He was only half joking. At least on Earth I could find a wife. Out here there's nothing but empty space and broken machines. "You want a wife?" Danny raised his eyebrows. "You can barely take care of yourself." "That's why I need a wife," Kyle said. "Someone to stop me from eating cardboard chicken every night." A few other crew members at nearby tables started listening to their conversation. Kyle noticed but did not care. He was too tired to care about anything. "What kind of wife do you want?" Danny asked, still grinning. Kyle thought about it for a moment. Then, because he was exhausted and not thinking clearly, he said something stupid. "I want a warrior woman," Kyle announced to the entire mess hall. His voice was louder than he meant it to be. "Someone strong. Someone brave. I don't care what species she is. Human, alien, whatever. If she can tolerate my terrible cooking and worse jokes, I'll follow her to the ends of the universe." The mess hall went quiet for a second. Then everyone started laughing. Danny laughed so hard he almost fell off his chair. "You hear that, universe?" Danny shouted. "Kyle Brennan wants a warrior wife. Any takers?" More laughter filled the room. Kyle felt his face turn red, but he laughed too. It was a stupid joke, nothing more. He finished his meal quickly and left the mess hall, still hearing the laughter behind him. What Kyle did not know was that the mess hall's communication array had been damaged during the repairs. When he spoke, his words were not just heard in the mess hall. They were broadcast across multiple star systems through the open diplomatic channels. Dozens of alien civilizations heard his joke, and one of them took it seriously. 3 days later, Kyle was back in engineering, working on another broken machine. He was on his knees reaching into a tight space to replace a power cell when he heard footsteps behind him. "Kyle, you need to come with me," said a voice. It was Captain Greg Sullivan. Kyle pulled himself out of the tight space and stood up. The captain looked worried, which was never a good sign. "What's wrong?" Kyle asked. "There's a ship requesting permission to dock," the captain said. "They say they're here for you." "For me? Why would anyone be here for me?" "It's a Crimson Dominion warship." Kyle felt his stomach drop. The Crimson Dominion. Vampires. Humanity had only made contact with them a few months ago, and everything Kyle had heard about them was terrifying. They were warriors, each one capable of tearing through a squad of human soldiers. Their ships could destroy entire fleets, and now one of their warships was here for him. "Why do they want me?" Kyle asked. "I don't know," the captain said. "But we can't refuse them. Come on." Kyle followed the captain through the ship's corridors. Other crew members stared at him as he passed. News traveled fast on a colony ship. By now, everyone probably knew that a vampire warship had come for Kyle Brennan. They reached the docking bay. Through the windows, Kyle could see the Crimson Dominion ship. It was huge, easily 3 times the size of the Horizon's Edge. Its hull was black and red, and it bristled with weapons. Kyle felt his hands start to shake. The airlock opened with a hiss. A cold wind blew through the docking bay, bringing with it a smell like metal and old stone. Then they came through. There were 5 of them, all wearing black armor that looked like it was made from shadows. They moved with perfect coordination, each step precise and controlled. But Kyle only noticed the one in front. She was tall, taller than any human woman Kyle had ever seen. Her skin was pale, almost white, and her hair was black as space itself. She wore armor decorated with red symbols, and a long sword hung at her side. But what caught Kyle's attention were her eyes. They were red, bright red, and they glowed slightly in the dim light of the docking bay. She walked straight toward Kyle, her boots clicking on the metal floor. The captain and the other crew members stepped back, but Kyle found he could not move. He was frozen in place, staring at those glowing red eyes. The vampire woman stopped in front of him. She was at least 6 inches taller than him, and Kyle had to look up to meet her gaze. "Are you Kyle Brennan?" she asked. Her voice was smooth and cold like ice water. "Yes," Kyle managed to say. "I am Commander Sarah Blackthorne of the Crimson Dominion," she said. "3 days ago, you made a declaration across the diplomatic channels. You said you would accept any warrior woman who could tolerate you, and that you would follow her to the ends of the universe." Kyle's mind went blank. Then he remembered the mess hall. His stupid joke about wanting a wife. "That was a joke," Kyle said quickly. "I didn't mean it. In my culture, such declarations are not jokes," Sarah said. "They are binding courtship challenges. You made a formal proposal and I accept it." "Wait, what?" "You are mine," Sarah said simply. "By the laws of the Crimson Dominion, I claim you as my intended mate. You will come with me to my homeworld." Kyle looked at Captain Sullivan for help. The captain's face had gone pale. "Commander Blackthorne," the captain said carefully. "I'm sure this is all a misunderstanding. Kyle didn't know about your laws. Ignorance does not invalidate the challenge," Sarah said. Her eyes never left Kyle's face. "He made the declaration. I accepted. It is done. I can't just leave," Kyle protested. "I have a job here. I have responsibilities. And now you have a greater responsibility," Sarah said. She moved closer and Kyle could smell something like cinnamon and smoke coming from her. "You made a promise to follow a warrior woman to the ends of the universe. I am here to take you there. And if I refuse?" Sarah's expression did not change, but her eyes grew brighter. "Refusing my claim would be a grave insult. It could be seen as an act of aggression against the Crimson Dominion." "Is that what you want?" Captain Sullivan put a hand on Kyle's shoulder. "Kyle, maybe you should go with her. Just until we can sort this out diplomatically. You want me to go with vampires to their homeworld because of a joke I made in the mess hall?" "I want to avoid a war," the captain said quietly. Kyle looked around the docking bay. Every human there was staring at him with fear in their eyes. He thought about the horizon's edge, a small colony ship with no weapons and no chance against a Crimson Dominion warship. He thought about the 300 people on board who would die if this went wrong. Then he looked back at Sarah Blackthorne. She was watching him with those glowing red eyes, waiting for his answer. "Fine," Kyle said. "I'll go with you. But only until we figure this out." "Good," Sarah said. She turned to her guards. "Take him to the ship." 2 of the armored vampires moved forward and took Kyle by the arms. Their grip was like iron. "Wait," Kyle said. "Can I at least get my things?" "You will not need them," Sarah said. "Everything you require will be provided." As the guards led him toward the airlock, Kyle looked back at Captain Sullivan one last time. "Tell Danny this is all his fault," Kyle said. Then he was through the airlock and onto the vampire ship, and the door sealed shut behind him with a sound like a tomb closing. The inside of the Eternal Nightfall was nothing like Kyle expected. He thought vampire ships would be dark and scary, full of coffins and blood. Instead, he found himself walking through corridors that looked like they belonged in a castle. The walls were made of dark stone, lit by red lights that cast everything in shades of crimson. Weapons and shields hung on the walls, and tapestries showed battles from long ago. The guards led him through the ship until they reached a large door. It opened automatically, revealing a room that made Kyle stop and stare. It was bigger than his entire apartment back on Earth. A huge bed sat against one wall covered in dark red blankets. There were chairs, a desk, and even a window that looked out into space. "These are your quarters," one of the guards said. "Commander Blackthorne's rooms are next door. You are not to leave this area without permission." Then they left, and Kyle was alone. He sat on the bed and put his head in his hands. This could not be real. 3 days ago, he was just a tired engineer making stupid jokes in a mess hall. Now he was on a vampire warship, claimed as a mate by some commander he had never met, traveling to a world he had never heard of. A knock on the door made him look up. Before he could say anything, the door opened and a woman walked in. She was human, Kyle could tell right away. She had brown hair and green eyes, and she wore the same black armor as the other guards. "Hello," she said. "I'm Ashley Crane. Commander Blackthorne sent me to explain things to you." "You're human," Kyle said. "I am." I've been with the Crimson Dominion for 20 years now. 20 years? How did you end up here? Ashley sat in one of the chairs. Long story. Right now we need to talk about your situation. My situation is that I'm being kidnapped because of a joke. It's more complicated than that, Ashley said. In vampire culture, public declarations like yours are taken very seriously. When you said you would accept any warrior woman and follow her anywhere, you made what they call a blood challenge. It's a formal proposal. But I didn't know that. It doesn't matter. You said the words, and they were broadcast across their diplomatic channels. Commander Blackthorn heard them and decided to accept. Once she claimed you, the bond became official under Dominion law. Kyle stood up and started pacing. This is crazy. Can't someone explain to them that it was a mistake? They know it was a mistake, Ashley said. But refusing the claim now would be an insult. It could cause real problems between humans and vampires. The Dominion is very powerful, Kyle. Your captain made the right choice sending you here. So I'm supposed to just accept this? Marry some vampire commander I don't even know? Not marry. Not yet anyway. Right now you're claimed, which means you're under her protection. You have time to figure things out. Kyle stopped pacing and looked at Ashley. What's she like? This commander? Ashley smiled. Sarah is one of the best warriors in the Dominion. She's fair, honorable, and very strong. She's also over 200 years old and has seen more battles than you can imagine. She doesn't do anything without a reason. What reason could she have for claiming me? That's something you'll have to ask her yourself. Over the next 3 weeks, Kyle learned about life on a vampire warship. The trip to Sarah's homeworld would take time, and he could not stay locked in his room forever. Ashley became his guide, teaching him about vampire culture and helping him avoid mistakes that might get him killed. Kyle learned that vampires were not dead creatures like in old Earth stories. They were a living species that had evolved differently from humans. They needed blood to survive, but only small amounts, and they could eat regular food too. Their bodies were stronger and faster than human bodies, and they could live for hundreds of years. The blood thing bothers most humans, Ashley explained one day, but it's not like they drain people dry. They just need the proteins that are in blood. Most vampires use synthetic blood these days. Most. Some prefer the real thing. But it's always consensual. Taking blood by force is one of their worst crimes. Kyle also learned about the war. For 300 years, the Crimson Dominion had been fighting an enemy called the Devourers. They were creatures that consumed entire planets, eating every living thing they found. The war had killed billions and showed no sign of ending. That's why Sarah claimed you, Ashley said. The Dominion is desperate for allies. They think humans might be able to help them win the war. How could humans help? We don't have their strength or their technology. No, but we have something they don't. We adapt. We improvise. We find new solutions to old problems. That's what Sarah wants to test. She wants to see if a human can survive in their world. Kyle thought about that. It made sense in a strange way. He was not just some random guy anymore. He was an experiment, a test case for an alliance between two species. One evening, there was a knock on his door. Kyle opened it and found Sarah standing there. This was the first time he had seen her since boarding the ship. May I come in? She asked. It's your ship, Kyle said. Sarah entered and looked around the room. Are your quarters acceptable? They're better than anything I had on the horizon's edge. Good. She turned to face him. In the light of his room, Kyle could see her more clearly. She was beautiful in a cold, dangerous way, like a sword or a winter storm. Her red eyes watched him carefully. I wanted to speak with you. To explain. Explain why you kidnapped me? I did not kidnap you. I claimed you according to my laws. There is a difference. Kyle sat down on the bed. Fine. Explain why you claimed me then. Sarah was quiet for a moment, as if choosing her words carefully. My people are dying, she said finally. We have been at war for 3 centuries. We are strong, but strength alone is not enough. We need new allies, new ideas. When I heard your declaration, I saw an opportunity. An opportunity to use me as a test subject. An opportunity to see if humans and vampires can truly work together, Sarah corrected. If you can survive in my world, if you can adapt to our ways, it will prove that an alliance is possible. And if I can't survive, then we will have our answer. Sarah's expression did not change. I will not lie to you, Kyle. My world is dangerous. But I will protect you as much as I am able. Why? Kyle asked. Why do you care if I survive or not? For the first time, Sarah's cold expression softened slightly. "Because I am tired," she said quietly. "Tired of war. Tired of watching my people die. If there is even a small chance that you can help us find a new way, I must take it." They talked for hours that night. Sarah told Kyle about her life, about the battles she had fought and the friends she had lost. She described her homeworld, the Crimson Kingdom, where 3 dying stars painted everything in red light. She spoke of duty and honor and the weight of command. In turn, Kyle told her about Earth. He described cities that touched the sky and oceans that stretched forever. He talked about human history, about how humanity had nearly destroyed itself a dozen times but always managed to survive. He made jokes, terrible jokes, and was surprised when Sarah actually smiled. "You are strange," Sarah said. "You face danger with humor." "It's a human thing," Kyle replied. "If we don't laugh, we'll cry." "Perhaps that is what we need," Sarah said thoughtfully. "We have forgotten how to laugh." More days passed. Kyle spent time with Sarah and Ashley, learning about the world he was about to enter. He exercised in the ship's training room, trying to build up his strength. The vampire warriors who trained there watched him with curiosity. This weak human who had somehow caught their commander's attention. Finally, after 3 weeks of travel, they arrived at Sanguis Prime. Kyle stood at the window in his room and stared at the planet below. It was beautiful and terrifying. The whole world glowed red from the light of 3 giant stars. He could see massive cities built from dark stone and orbital stations that bristled with weapons. This was a civilization built for war. "Ready?" Ashley asked from the doorway. "No," Kyle said honestly, "but I guess that doesn't matter." They landed at a huge fortress that Sarah called Castle Night Vale. It had stood for 2,000 years, she explained, home to her family for all that time. As Kyle walked through its halls, he felt the weight of history pressing down on him. Sarah took him to a great hall where dozens of vampires waited. They all wore fine clothes and armor decorated with symbols Kyle did not recognize. "These were nobles," Ashley whispered. "Important people. This is Kyle Brennan," Sarah announced to the assembled vampires. "I have claimed him according to our laws. He is under my protection." Most of the vampires just stared at Kyle. A few nodded. One, a young woman with the same black hair as Sarah, looked angry. "Sister," the young woman said, "this human is weak. He will not survive a month here." "That is for him to prove, Lisa," Sarah replied. Lisa. Kyle remembered Ashley mentioning her. She was Sarah's younger sister, a commander in her own right. Then another vampire stepped forward, a man dressed in expensive armor. "Commander Blackthorn," he said with a smile that showed his fangs. "This claim is highly irregular. How do we know this human is worthy of you? Who are you?" Kyle asked before Sarah could answer. The man's smile disappeared. "I am Duke Victor Ashenblade. I have pursued your companion for over a century, and now she brings home a human pet." "He is not a pet," Sarah said, her voice cold and dangerous. "He is my claimed mate." "Then let him prove it," Victor said. The heat hit Kyle like a physical blow. Within an hour, his shirt was soaked with sweat. Within 2 hours, he understood why even vampire warriors feared this place. The Scarlet Wastes were not just hot. They were a furnace designed to kill anything stupid enough to enter. Kyle walked carefully, conserving his energy. He had learned some things from Ashley about desert survival, but knowing facts and living through them were different things. The red sand reflected heat from the 3 suns above, making everything feel like it was cooking. His skin hurt. His eyes hurt. Even breathing hurt. He needed to find shelter before nightfall. According to Ashley, the temperature would drop to freezing once the sun set. The Scarlet Waste wanted to kill you with heat during the day and cold during the night. Kyle had to survive both. After 4 hours of walking, he found what he was looking for. A rock formation rose from the sand, creating shadows and caves. Kyle explored carefully, checking for anything that might already live there. The caves were empty, but he found marks on the stone. Something with claws had been here before. He set up his basic shelter in the deepest cave using the kit Sarah had given him. It was not much, just some fabric and support poles, but it would keep the worst of the heat off him during the day. He set up his water recycler next, a device that would pull moisture from the air and turn it into drinking water. It would not make much, maybe a cup a day, but it might keep him alive. As the suns began to set, Kyle ate one of his ration bars and tried to rest. He could not sleep. The cave was too hot and his mind would not stop working. He thought about Sarah watching from the castle walls. He thought about Victor's smile and Lisa's doubts. He thought about the 300 people on the horizon's edge who were counting on him to not mess this up. The temperature dropped fast once night came. Within an hour, Kyle went from sweating to shivering. He wrapped himself in the shelter fabric and tried to stay warm. The cold was different from the heat, but just as dangerous. He could feel it seeping into his bones. A sound outside the cave made him freeze. Something was moving in the darkness. Kyle grabbed his plasma cutter and held very still. The sound came closer, then stopped. He waited, barely breathing, until the sound moved away. When dawn came, Kyle was exhausted but alive. 1 day down. 2 to go. The second day was worse. The heat seemed more intense and Kyle's water supply was already running low. His water recycler was working, but not fast enough. He needed to find another source or he would die of thirst before the trial ended. He left the cave early, searching for any sign of water. In deserts, water meant life. Animals needed it. Plants needed it. If he could find where they gathered, he might find water too. It took him 3 hours of searching before he found tracks in the sand. They were large, with 4 toes ending in claws. Whatever made them was big. Kyle followed them carefully, his plasma cutter ready. The tracks led to a canyon with steep walls. Kyle climbed down slowly, testing each handhold. At the bottom, he found what he was looking for. A small pool of water fed by some underground spring. It was not much, but it was enough. He was filling his water containers when he heard the sound. A low hiss that made his skin crawl. Kyle turned and saw them. Crystalline scorpions. That was what Ashley had called them. They looked like normal scorpions, but were the size of large dogs. Their bodies were covered in crystal-like armor that reflected the red light. There were 6 of them, and they were surrounding him. Kyle knew he could not fight them. His plasma cutter might hurt one, but the others would kill him before he could defend himself. He needed to think. The scorpions moved forward slowly. They did not seem to be in a hurry. Kyle noticed they were moving carefully around the water pool. Maybe they needed the water too. Maybe this was their territory and he was the intruder. He backed away from the pool, moving toward the canyon wall. The scorpions followed but did not attack. They wanted him away from the water. Kyle could work with that. He climbed back up the canyon wall, moving faster than was safe. One wrong move and he would fall and break something. But the scorpions were faster, climbing the walls like they had suction cups on their feet. At the top of the canyon, Kyle ran. He ran across the red sand, not caring about conserving energy anymore. He just needed distance. Behind him, the scorpions gave chase, their claws clicking on the stone. Kyle's mind raced. He could not outrun them. He could not fight them. But maybe he could outsmart them. He remembered something Ashley had told him. Crystalline scorpions hunted by sensing heat. Their crystal armor helped them detect warm bodies in the cold desert nights. Kyle stopped running. He turned and raised his plasma cutter. The scorpions slowed down, confused by his change in behavior. Then Kyle did something crazy. He fired the plasma cutter at the sand in front of him. The superheated plasma turned the sand into glass, creating a barrier of molten heat. He kept firing, sweeping the cutter back and forth, creating more and more glass. The heat signature was enormous, much bigger than Kyle's own body heat. The scorpions stopped. Their heat-sensing organs were overwhelmed by all the hot glass. They could not tell where Kyle was anymore. They scattered, confused and frustrated. Kyle did not wait. He ran again, this time in a different direction. He found another rock formation and hid in its shadows until the scorpions gave up and went back to their canyon. Back at Castle Night Vale, Sarah watched the long-range scanners with her heart in her throat. She had seen Kyle surrounded by the scorpions. She had been ready to violate the trial rules and send help. Then he had turned the situation around using nothing but his brain and a tool. He is clever, Lisa admitted, standing beside her sister. I did not expect that. Humans survive through cleverness, Ashley said. She was smiling. That's what they do best. Kyle made it back to his cave as night fell. He had water now, enough to last the rest of the trial, but he was exhausted and his body hurt everywhere. He fell asleep before he even meant to. On the 3rd day, Kyle woke to a sound that made his blood run cold. It was a roar, deep and angry, coming from somewhere close. He crawled to the entrance of his cave and looked out. A crimson drake stood on the rocks above him. It was huge, maybe 20 feet long, with wings that spread even wider. Its scales were dark red, almost black, and its eyes glowed like hot coals. Ashley had warned him about drakes. They were the most dangerous predators in the Scarlet Wastes. Even vampire warriors avoided them, but something was wrong with this drake. It was favoring one wing, holding it at an odd angle. As Kyle watched, he saw blood dripping from wounds along its side. The drake was hurt. The smart thing to do was hide and wait for it to leave. A wounded predator was even more dangerous than a healthy one. But Kyle found himself climbing out of the cave instead. He could not explain why. Maybe it was because he knew what pain felt like. Maybe it was because he was tired of being afraid. The drake saw him immediately. It roared again, a sound that shook the rocks. Kyle held up his hands, showing he was not carrying a weapon. "Easy," he said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you." The drake tilted its head, watching him with intelligent eyes. Kyle moved closer slowly, one step at a time. The drake could kill him with one swipe of its claws, but it did not attack. It just watched. Kyle reached the drake and examined its wing. The bone was broken and the wounds were infected. Without treatment, the drake would die slowly and painfully. "This is going to hurt," Kyle said. He pulled out his basic medical kit, the one Sarah had included with his supplies. For the next 2 hours, Kyle worked on the drake's injuries. He cleaned the wounds with water from his supply. He used antibiotics from the kit, precious medicine that he was supposed to save for himself. He even made a splint for the broken wing using pieces of his shelter kit. The drake endured the treatment without moving, though Kyle could feel it trembling with pain. When he was done, Kyle stepped back and waited. The drake looked at its bandaged wing. Then it looked at Kyle. Something passed between them, an understanding that crossed the barrier of species. The drake lowered its head and made a sound that was almost gentle. Kyle reached out carefully and touched the drake's scales. They were warm and rough. "You're welcome," he said. The drake stayed with Kyle for the rest of the day and through the night. When dawn came on the 4th day, the end of the trial period, the drake was still there. Kyle packed up what was left of his supplies. He had survived the 3 days. Barely, but he had done it. Now he just needed to walk back to Castle Nightvale and this nightmare would be over. He was halfway across the Scarlet Wastes when he saw them, 6 figures in powered armor, moving across the sand toward him. At first, Kyle thought they were a rescue party. Then he saw their weapons drawn and realized the truth. They were here to kill him. The drake beside Kyle roared. It had seen the threat too. Kyle's mind raced. These were vampire warriors in full battle armor. He had no chance against even one of them, let alone 6. But he noticed something. They were approaching through a narrow canyon, a natural choke point. The canyon walls were steep and unstable. Kyle had walked around this area specifically because it looked dangerous. "Can you fly?" Kyle asked the drake. The broken wing was still splinted, but maybe the drake could manage short flights. The drake spread its wings and managed to lift off the ground. Kyle spent 2 days recovering in Castle Nightvale. His body hurt everywhere and his skin was burned from the 3 suns. But he was alive, and that was more than most people expected. The captured warriors had confessed under interrogation. Duke Victor had sent them to kill Kyle and make it look like an accident. For violating the sacred laws of the trial, Victor was stripped of his title and exiled from the Crimson Kingdom. His lands and wealth were taken away and he was forbidden from ever returning. Kyle watched from a window as Victor left the castle in disgrace. The Duke's last look was pure hatred, directed straight at Kyle. That look promised revenge someday, but Kyle had bigger problems to worry about. A message had arrived from the border systems. The Devourers were coming. Sarah called a council meeting in the war room. Kyle attended, though he felt out of place among all the vampire commanders and nobles. They stood around a massive holographic display, showing the Dominion's territory and the approaching enemy fleet. "The Devourers have assembled their largest fleet in decades," Sarah explained to the gathered commanders. "Intelligence estimates over 1,000 ships. They are heading directly for Valdris, one of our most important border systems. If Valdris falls, the path to Sanguis Prime will be open." "How many ships can we field?" asked one of the commanders. 50, maybe 60 if we pull vessels from patrol duties." The room went quiet. 50 against 1,000. It was impossible. "We will fight anyway," Lisa said firmly. "We have held them before against worse odds, and lost thousands of warriors doing so," another commander argued. "This is different. This is an extinction-level attack. They argued for an hour about strategies, all of them variations of the same basic plan. Meet the enemy head-on, fight with honor, die with glory. Kyle listened and realized that the vampires were going to lose. They were too stuck in their ways, too bound by tradition. Finally, he spoke up. "Can I say something?" The room fell silent. Everyone turned to look at him. Sarah nodded. "You're going to lose," Kyle said bluntly. "If you fight the way you always fight, the Devourers will destroy you." Several commanders bristled at his words. Lisa looked angry, but Sarah held up a hand for silence. "Explain," she said. Kyle walked to the holographic display. "You're thinking like soldiers. Honor, glory, direct combat. But the Devourers don't care about honor. They just want to consume you. So you need to think differently." "How?" asked Ashley, who was also at the meeting. Kyle studied the display, his engineer's mind working through the problem. "On Earth, we had a war a long time ago. Humans fought in the Pacific Ocean against an enemy that had more ships and more resources. They should have lost. But they won because they didn't fight fair. They used intelligence, surprise attacks, and they targeted the enemy's weak points instead of their strengths." "You suggest we ambush them?" one commander asked. "That is cowardly." "It's smart," Kyle countered. "Look at the Devourer fleet structure. They move in swarms, right?
All those ships need coordination.
That means they have command ships, ships that tell all the others what to do. What if you destroy the command ships?" Sarah leaned forward, interested now. "The swarm would lose coordination." "Exactly. Without orders, they'll be confused. They might even attack each other. Your 50 ships can't beat 1,000 in a fair fight, but you don't need to fight fair. You need to fight smart." The commanders started arguing again, some agreeing with Kyle's idea, others calling it dishonorable. Finally, Sarah made a decision. "We will try the human strategy," she announced. "I will take the main fleet to Valdris and hold the line. Kyle will lead a strike force to attack the command ships. You trust a human to lead our warriors?" Lisa asked, shocked. "I trust his mind," Sarah replied. "And you will go with him as second in command. Keep him alive and follow his strategies." 3 days later, Kyle found himself back on the Eternal Nightfall with a small fleet of fast attack ships. His strike force consisted of 20 vessels, each crewed by vampire warriors who were not happy about taking orders from a human. Lisa commanded one of the ships, and Ashley served as Kyle's second aboard the Eternal Nightfall. They traveled to Valdris ahead of the main fleet. Kyle spent the journey studying everything he could about Devourer tactics and technology. The enemy ships were biological, grown rather than built, and they communicated through some kind of neural network. That network had to have central nodes, command structures that controlled large sections of the swarm. When they arrived at Valdris, Kyle set up long-range scanners and watched the Devourer fleet approach. There were so many ships that they blocked out the stars. The sight made Kyle's stomach turn. How could anyone fight against something like that? "There," Kyle said, pointing at the display. "Those 3 larger ships in the center of the formation. See how the others move in relation to them? Those are command nodes." "You are certain?" Lisa asked. "No," Kyle admitted. "But it's the best guess I have." The Devourer fleet entered the Valdris system. Sarah's main fleet moved to intercept, forming a defensive line between the enemy and the planet. The 2 fleets opened fire and space lit up with weapons fire. "Now," Kyle said, "while they're focused on the main fleet, we attack." The Shadow Fangs, as Kyle had named his strike force, broke from their hiding positions and dove toward the enemy formation. They moved fast, using every bit of speed their ships had. The vampires were natural warriors, and even if they doubted Kyle's plan, they executed it perfectly. Kyle targeted the first command ship with plasma torpedoes. The weapon struck home and the biological ship actually screamed before exploding. Immediately, a section of the Devourer swarm lost coordination. Ships started drifting, unsure what to do. "It works," Ashley said, amazed. "Hit the other 2, Kyle ordered. The Shadow Fangs split up, each group targeting a different command ship. The vampires fought with deadly precision, their ships dancing through the enemy formation like knives through water. Lisa's team destroyed the second command ship. Ashley's group took out the third. The effect was immediate and catastrophic for the Devourers. Without their command nodes, huge sections of the swarm lost all coordination. Ships began crashing into each other. Some started firing at their own allies. The organized assault turned into chaos. Sarah's main fleet pressed the advantage, driving into the confused enemy ranks. The battle that should have been a massacre turned into a victory. The devourers retreated, fleeing the system in complete disorder. When it was over, Kyle sat in the command chair of the Eternal Nightfall and tried not to shake. They had won. Against impossible odds, they had actually won. Back at Valdris, the combined fleet celebrated. Vampire warriors who had doubted Kyle now looked at him with respect. He had changed the way they thought about war. His tactics had saved thousands of lives and secured a crucial victory. But not everyone was happy. News of the victory spread through the Crimson Dominion, and with it news of how it was achieved. Conservative nobles who valued tradition above all else were outraged. Humans were corrupting vampire culture, they said. This Kyle Brennan was dangerous. A faction led by Duchess Helena Ironblood began demanding that Kyle be studied. They wanted to know what made humans so different, so adaptable. Some suggested taking him apart to find out, examining his brain, his genetics, everything that made him human. Sarah refused absolutely. Kyle was under her protection and no one would harm him, but the political pressure kept growing. Other nobles joined Helena's faction, seeing an opportunity to gain power by opposing Sarah. Then came the assassination attempt. Kyle was in his quarters at Castle Nightvale, reviewing tactical data for future operations when his door exploded inward. 3 figures in black armor rushed in, carrying weapons designed to kill quickly and quietly. Kyle dove behind his desk as plasma fire tore through the room. He had no weapons, no armor, nothing to defend himself with. This was it. He was going to die. Then his crimson drake burst through the window. The creature had been sleeping on the castle walls but sensed danger to its friend. It attacked the assassins with claws and fire breath, giving Kyle time to escape. Guards arrived within seconds, drawn by the sounds of combat. They killed 2 assassins and captured the 3rd. Under interrogation, the captured assassin revealed the truth. They were devourer infiltrators, hired by vampire nobles to eliminate Kyle. The revelation shocked the Dominion. Vampire nobles had committed treason, working with the enemy to kill a guest under protection. It was one of the worst crimes imaginable. Sarah called for an emergency session of the Crimson Council, the ruling body of the Dominion. Kyle was summoned to appear before them and testify. The council chamber was huge with seats for hundreds of nobles. Kyle stood in the center while they all stared down at him. He felt like a bug under a microscope. Duchess Helena stood to speak. This human has brought chaos to our society. Our warriors abandon honor for tricks. Our traditions are mocked. He must be removed. Other nobles shouted in agreement, but just as many shouted in disagreement. The council was divided. Sarah stood. Kyle Brennan saved Valdris. His strategies defeated an enemy that should have destroyed us. He has proven his value a dozen times over. At what cost? Helena demanded. We are vampires, not humans. We have our own ways, our own honor. Kyle raised his hand, asking permission to speak. The Devourer fleet appeared on long-range scanners like a spreading disease. Over 1,000 bioships all heading toward Sanguis Prime. It was the largest force ever assembled in the 300-year war. If they reached the capital world, the Crimson Dominion would fall. Every available ship in the Dominion was recalled to defend their homeworld. The fleet that assembled was impressive by any standard. 400 warships representing the full military might of vampire civilization. But against 1,000 devourers, it still was not enough. Kyle spent 3 days working without sleep. He reviewed every battle record, every tactical analysis, every scrap of information about devourer strategy. There had to be a way to win this. There had to be something they were missing. On the 3rd day, exhausted and desperate, Kyle found it. The answer was in the Scarlet Nebula itself, the region of space where Sanguis Prime orbited. 3 dying red giant stars created overlapping gravity wells and radiation fields. Ships had to navigate carefully through this region, or risk being torn apart by gravitational forces. What if we didn't navigate carefully? Kyle asked Sarah. They were in the war room with Lisa, Ashley, and the senior commanders. Explain, Sarah said. Kyle brought up a holographic model of the Scarlet Nebula. These 3 stars are dying. They're unstable. One of them is close to going nova, according to your scientific data. What if we help it along? The commander stared at him like he was insane. You want to explode a star? Lisa asked. Not explode, direct it. If we place fusion charges at specific points around the star and trigger them at exactly the right moment, we can create a controlled nova burst. The gravity wells will channel that energy like a weapon, straight into whatever is in the path. The Devourers, Ashley breathed, understanding. We lure them into the kill zone and trigger the star. Kyle continued. The radiation burst will destroy most of their fleet instantly. And what about our ships? One commander asked. We pull back before the trigger. The eternal nightfall acts as bait, leading them through the nebula to the exact position we need. Once they commit, we retreat through a safe corridor while the star does the rest. Sarah studied the holographic model. This could work. But someone would need to stay behind to manually trigger the charges. The timing must be perfect, and it would need to be done from close range. I'll do it, Kyle said immediately. No, Sarah said firmly. Yes, Kyle insisted. Look at the math. The radiation will kill anyone instantly, even vampires. Your cellular structure can't handle that much energy. But humans can be put in medical stasis. There's a small chance my brain patterns could be preserved long enough to trigger the charges. A small chance is not enough, Sarah argued. It's better than no chance, Kyle replied. And it's our only option. If we don't do this, everyone dies anyway. At least this way. Most people survive. The War Council debated for hours. Some commanders argued against the plan, calling it too risky. Others said it was their only hope. In the end, Sarah made the decision as the ranking military commander. We proceed with Kyle's plan, she announced. Prepare the fusion charges and the trigger station, and find me the best medical stasis system we have. The next week was a blur of preparation. Engineers placed massive fusion charges around the unstable star, each one carefully positioned to create the exact effect Kyle had calculated. A trigger station was built. A small platform that could withstand the initial radiation burst long enough for one person to activate the charges. Kyle trained with the equipment every day, memorizing every step of the activation sequence. There could be no mistakes. One wrong move and the entire plan would fail. Ashley volunteered to go with him to the trigger station. You shouldn't face this alone, she said. You'll die too, Kyle pointed out. Maybe, but at least we'll die doing something that matters. The night before the battle, Sarah came to Kyle's quarters. She looked different somehow, vulnerable in a way he had never seen before. I'm asking you not to do this, she said quietly. You know I have to, Kyle replied. I know, but I'm still asking. She moved closer. In all my 200 years, I never let myself care about someone like I care about you. I told myself it was strategic, that I was testing human potential. But that was a lie. I know, Kyle said. I care about you too. Then stay. Let someone else trigger the charges. There is no one else. You know that. Kyle took her hands. Sarah, if this works, your people survive. Humanity and the Dominion can build something real together. That's worth my life. Not to me, Sarah whispered. Tears ran down her face the first time Kyle had ever seen her cry. They stood together in silence, holding each other, knowing it might be the last time. The Devourer fleet arrived the next day. They emerged from hyperspace in a massive swarm, blotting out the stars. Every ship in the Crimson Dominion fleet moved to intercept, but they could not hope to stop such numbers. Sarah took the Eternal Nightfall on a dangerous run straight through the enemy formation. The Devourers took the bait, their entire fleet pursuing the flagship. The chase led them deeper into the Scarlet Nebula, through the overlapping gravity wells exactly where Kyle needed them to be. Kyle and Ashley reached the trigger station in a small transport. The station was just a platform with basic life support and the controls for the fusion charges. They would have maybe 10 minutes here before the radiation killed them, even with shielding. Ready? Ashley asked as they boarded the station. No, Kyle admitted. But let's do it anyway. They activated the station's systems and watched the tactical display. The Devourer fleet was moving into position, 1,000 ships strong. The Eternal Nightfall led them on, always staying just out of weapons range, drawing them deeper. They're committed, Ashley said. The whole fleet is in the kill zone. Kyle's hands moved over the controls, entering the final activation codes. The fusion charges armed themselves, ready to destabilize the dying star. On the Eternal Nightfall, Sarah gave the order to retreat. Every Dominion ship turned and fled through pre-calculated safe routes, escaping the kill zone as fast as their engines could carry them. The Devourers tried to follow but could not match the vampire ship's speed through the dangerous gravity wells. Kyle opened a communication channel. Every ship in the Dominion fleet could hear him. Sarah's face appeared on his screen, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Thank you," Kyle said to her. "Thank you for showing me what real courage looks like. Thank you for giving me a purpose bigger than myself. I love you, Sarah Blackthorne, and I'm proud to call you mine." "I love you too," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "I will never forget you." Kyle looked at Ashley. She nodded, ready. They both knew what came next. "For the Crimson Dominion," Kyle said. "For humanity. For everyone who comes after us." He pressed the activation button. The dying star erupted. Fusion charges triggered a chain reaction that released 300 years' worth of stored energy in one massive burst. The gravity wells channeled that energy like a lens, focusing it directly into the Devourer fleet. The Nova burst was beautiful and terrible. It painted space in colors that had no names. 800 Devourer ships simply ceased to exist, vaporized in an instant. The remaining ships fled in complete disorder, their swarm mentality shattered by the loss of so many command nodes. The Crimson Dominion had won. The price was the trigger station, consumed by the stellar fire along with everyone on it. 3 months later, Sarah stood in the Hall of Heroes at Castle Night Vale. A monument had been built to Kyle Brennan, the human who saved the Crimson Kingdom. Thousands of people visited it every day, both vampires and humans. Diplomatic delegations from Earth arrived weekly, working to build the alliance that Kyle had died to create. Sarah visited the monument every morning. She spoke to Kyle's memory about the changes happening in the Dominion. Lisa now commanded the Shadowfangs, training new integrated human-vampire units. Conservative factions had lost their influence, replaced by leaders who embraced cooperation with humanity. "You changed everything," Sarah said to the monument. "You changed me. I just wish you were here to see it." A guard approached. "Commander Blackthorne, there's news from the science expedition." "What expedition?" "The team searching the trigger station debris. They found something." Sarah's heart stopped. "Show me." She ran to the medical facility where the science team had taken their discovery. A stasis pod, heavily damaged but with its core systems somehow still functioning. The chances of anything surviving the Nova burst were less than 1 in a million. But the pod had been caught in a strange pocket of the gravity well, protected by forces no one fully understood. "Is he alive?" Sarah demanded. "We don't know," the chief medical officer said. "The neural patterns are preserved, but restoring them to a functioning body is experimental. We're using combined human and vampire medical technology, but we've never attempted anything like this before." "Do it," Sarah ordered. "Use every resource we have. I don't care what it costs." The revival process took weeks. Teams of doctors worked around the clock, carefully rebuilding neural pathways and repairing damaged tissue. Sarah never left the medical facility, watching over the process day and night. Lisa tried to prepare her sister for disappointment. "Sarah, even if his body recovers, he might not be the same. Memory loss, personality changes, we just don't know." "I know," Sarah said, "but I have to try.